primarily to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that represents and enhances the freedom of others. So let's get into the discussion of future females in tech. Welcome, panel. I'm going to ask you to first just introduce yourselves, and then we'll frame the discussion for the day.
I would say ladies first, but I'm holding the mic, so we'll just maybe go left to right. It's a privilege to be here. My name is Philip Kirikoff. I'm CEO and co-founder of Startup Bootcamp Afritech, which is the largest kind of accelerator program operating on the African continent. Our mission is to scout, skill, and scale the most disruptive African founders. Each year we receive about 2,300 applications for 10 spots to get into the program. And we are proud to say that from our alumni, about 40% are female-led companies.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Evelyn Dior-Sampa, and I'm the managing director of Week Capital, which is a fund based in Senegal and investing in women-led businesses in Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire. So the fund was backed by an angels network, an angel of women, actually. And we do early stage tickets ranging from 50,000 to 500,000 USD. I will take the time to tell you a little bit more about the why we focus on women.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Bongani Sitole. I'm the managing director of Founders Factory Africa. We are HQ'd in South Africa, but we operate across Pan-African. We have presence in South Africa, as I said, Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya as well. We are a venture development company backed by corporates, essentially bringing unfair advantage between startups and corporates, and essentially helping them to move further faster. The reason why I'm really interested in this topic is because as an ecosystem builder, we enable early stage ventures, but equally very much prioritizing women founders. So it's a very topical debate that we always have in our company, and ensuring to make sure that we build the ecosystem, and of course with women as being priority. So happy to chat about that in detail.
My name is Chukwuyemisi Isiche. I work with research at Future Africa. So Future Africa is an early stage venture fund that operates out of Nigeria, but then we have a Pan-African outlook. So we're one of the most active early stage investors in Nigeria. The firm was formalized in 2020, but we have 75 plus portfolio companies. We're able to do this because our check sizes are small, so we go from 25K to 500K and can go above if need be. So we try to spread our wings across the entire continent and invest where we can. We're very big on founder support because, like I mentioned, our check sizes are not that great, but then we invest our time and then we venture build alongside these companies. So that's what makes us a very important asset to companies, and that's why they look for us on their cap table.
Fantastic, welcome, Chu. So I want to frame the discussion just to get us all onto the same page, and I'm going to allow me to share a minute of two of statistics with you. So we've come out of the pandemic, thank God, and we know that 37% of global GDP is currently generated by females across the world. We also know that we have the war in Russia looming, or it's very much going. The impact of the war in Russia is going to hit us, but the reality is that female entrepreneurship, and I'm going to read some stats to you, really has an impact on economies globally. Check these stats with me. There's a United Nations Gender Response Tracker. I don't know if you're aware of it. They do it annually. Only 10% of all policy measures put in place globally are gender sensitive. How interesting is that? The second one, startups with female founders fill their teams 2.5 times more with women, according to the Kaufman Foundation, than those who don't. Another common factor and condition, so this is from the MasterCard study. MasterCard does a study every year, and the 2021 study for female founders in globally, of course the States, New Zealand and Canada still the top 3. Angola, Ghana, I saw last night when I prepared for this, South Africa is on the top 35 or 45, but the reality is some of our African countries are not even in the top 50. But common factors for those countries who do well from the MasterCard study have this in common: high rate of women enrollment in tertiary education, easy and fair access to finance for women specifically, and strong government support in small businesses. So this has an impact on those countries who do better with female entrepreneurship. And the last stat I want to share with you, and this is especially for us as VCs in the room, where investment go into female-founded businesses, the returns are more than 2 times that of a standard business, just male, and a little bit better if it's male and female mix. So it makes financial sense to get the balance of our portfolios right. So that's the background that I just wanted to sketch, and we want to get into some of the questions around this. In Africa alone, we've only had, depending on who you ask, 1 to 3% of investments going straight into female-founded businesses. And if they bring 2 to 2.5% more return, we would want to ask ourselves the question why, and that's why the panel's here. So I'm going to position the first question. There are 3 questions. Feel free to let's free flow. But let's go to the first question. So empowering women to take full and equal part in the working world, especially empowering female founders, as we've now learned, is incredibly important for our global economic recovery. What are the barriers at the moment across our countries in Africa avoiding or not enabling women to take their fair share in the economies?
So first off, the common one we always say, there's not enough funding to go around. But then besides that, I think our biases kind of affect what we invest in. And a lot of times, and this has been proven, more women startups kind of think socially as opposed to just profit. So a lot of times, women-led businesses may position as social businesses, and a lot of VCs or a lot of funders might just look over it. But at the core of it, social businesses are huge. They are not a niche market, because a lot of people would look at it. So for, let's say, a company that's trying to fund, that's trying to grow female hygiene products, or that's trying to do education for kids in rural areas, a lot of VCs will look at it and just gloss over it because, hey, we're looking for fast growth, we're looking for fintech, we just want to put our money, and in the next 2 days, we want returns. But that doesn't always work. And if you use that lens, and if you use that model to look at female-led businesses, you probably wouldn't put your money in it, which is why more people need to educate themselves, get more insights, and look deep, and not just gloss over decks. It will help to have a conversation, see where the founder is coming from, and then be able to put your input.
So biases, I'm hearing, is a definite one. And secondly, we make decisions on those, what we see we're comfortable with. Got that. Bongani.
Cool. I think I want to maybe take a step back. I don't think that is a challenge of VC per se. I think the VC market is constrained by the fact that there's not enough women founders on the market. And there's a question that one might ask and say, is it really a VC problem to increase that pool? And I think it's really more of a systematic problem. Yesterday I was having a chat with some of the team here locally, and we're just exploring and just discussing about this point. And fundamentally in Africa and how the markets work, there is an expectation culturally of how women need to behave and the things that they can be able to get exposed to, which I think fundamentally is a problem. We're talking about programs that ecosystem builders like Founders Factory can enable, and other ecosystem players, and the training that we can enable in the market. And funny enough, there was a question of between men and women, we have 24 hours, but the way in which the culture is expecting how the 24 hours can be used is different. where women, for example, they're expected between 5 and 8 o'clock, they need to be at home, they need to be preparing certain things for the household, etc. Whereas on the other spectrum, you have men who have all of this time to themselves. So men have got a lot more opportunity and time in their hands to be able to partake in these, some of these programs without limitation. And women, on the other hand, are constrained by some of these cultural expectations. So it's a fundamental problem that I think as Africans we need to rethink. And when we enable this for women, how do we take those sorts of cultural nuances into consideration to create programs that allow participation for both men and women at the same amount of time to be able to participate in these opportunities? And I think I wanted to take it at the grassroots level before we think about what does it mean for VC, and fundamentally how do we enable same opportunities for both men and women, taking culture into consideration.
Fully agree. Basic social, political, financial changes needed to be made, as well as cultural, to get there. Evelyn?
Fully agree too. For example, when we were launching our fund, this is something that we had minimized. And just to give an example, we went to see a group of female CEOs that work together, and they were saying we are minimizing the fact that when we sit together, instead of speaking about issues about our business, we speak about our personal issues, like the imminent divorces, the family that is not taken care of, etc., etc. So this is something you have to take into account, and this is something you have to be intentional about when you are working with female entrepreneurs. But then to come back to the other challenges, I always come back to the fact that in our economies, women still work at a very small scale, and so financial solutions has to come to that first, provide smaller tickets, and grow the pipeline of then larger VC funds. Yeah. And this is why having local angel networks are important, having early stage funds are also important. And then while bringing this solution of capital, bringing also technical assistance. And in the technical assistance that you bring, it's about business support, it's about coaching as well, and it's about mentoring.
I really like your point on being intentional about it. I think that's massive to bring the focus. Philip?
Yeah, thanks. So I think one of the themes that we're picking up on is, you brought the point that it's hard for VCs to pull more women into this, right? By the time the VCs are getting involved, it's normally post-angel round, maybe even post a seed round. The role that Founders Factory and we get to play is at the accelerator stage. So we're really able to be a part of that solution. Finding those female-led organizations at some of the early stages and getting them really creating environments where that enable parity, so that the female-led businesses can be considered on parity. They get access to the same sorts of VC funds. They're able to get into the same sort of pitches, and they have the abilities to. Sorry, ability is not the right word. They're able to. They have access to the same resources, so that in their presentations and in the way that their businesses are presented and showcased, that it's speaking to the same expectations as male-led businesses. Because what we know is that typically, because the VC industry and the investor community is still dominated by men, they're listening for different things in those pitches. And oftentimes the way that businesses, that female-led founders are presenting their solutions is not landing. It's almost, the classic speaking a different language, but so oftentimes their pitches, even for the same businesses, wouldn't land in the same way. So we spend a lot of time at Startup Bootcamp, and I know Founders Factory does the same thing, really working on pitching as a way of storytelling, so that all of the companies, and especially the female-led businesses, are able to present their businesses in the most compelling way possible. And then the one final point I'll make is just appreciation by the investors, and for us it's a constant effort just to remind ourselves of just how hard that extra responsibility is. We have Jocelyn from our team, who's one of our head marketing people, but two of our female founders who are all moms. And it's absolutely incredible to me that they're able to take time away to be here in Dakar when their families are back home, and to commit the time and effort when there's so many additional responsibilities on them and they seem to be able to do it without missing a beat. So I have like just incredible respect and admiration for the female-led founders, especially those that are also moms.
Yeah. So I actually want to follow on with a question, and if you mind keeping the mic, and then we can go this way. So we know we have these institutional patterns, as you've just discussed, right? It's there, and we have these biases. And really, if we look at the VC world and our LPs and our funders, do they really care for this? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, the question was actually raised this weekend in the unconference, and there was a point that was made of we should be targeting 50% fund managers, 50% gender balance between fund managers, male and female. And I'll put up my hand and say I was actually surprised that there might even be a desire for 50%. That, you know, I was very much a bias. But finance seems to be historically one of those industries that's male dominated, and even if we were to change and make accessibility 100% on parity, it's not clear to me at this stage that finance is an industry that you know, half of all women would want to be in. So that's one thing I don't know. But certainly we are huge advocates for creating equal opportunities. And one thing that we take a very active role and position on is that we go above and beyond in the sense that we will, if we find two candidates with similar capability, we will deliberately choose the previously disadvantaged, it's a South African term, or the female candidate, or the black African candidate, and train them into that role. Because we take the long-term view, which is that the only way that the tide is going to shift is if we are deliberately providing people, even if they have less qualifications or less, they might even have less aspirations, but by providing those opportunities and giving them the chance to evaluate that and see if it's a good fit for them, they could still choose maybe I want to be in this field or I don't want to be in this field, but we've at least given that person the opportunity to get an insight and to get a chance that they would never, or it's unlikely that they would ever get that opportunity elsewhere. So I think all organizations really need to really take that kind of approach.
Yeah, and be intentional, as Evelyn said. Evelyn, what are your thoughts on this?
I think LPS Care, at least that's what you see on their website. Yeah. The fact is that they are not taking the right steps. The industry is very much still male and white male. You see a majority of white male. And the statistics are just incredible. Like globally, you have less than 2% of assets under management that are owned or managed by women or black people, right? And you know that when you put the money into female fund managers, this money is going to go to female founders. And there's all this, like gender-lens investing is kind of a la mode. Everybody's kind of, there's also like some indicators are like painted in pink, just to show that we are impacting women when actually women still don't have access to capital. So LPS Care, they are not doing enough. They have to fund more female fund managers, but their criteria are set in stone because all these female fund managers that are emerging are first-time fund managers. They are based in African countries, and they have structured their funds in ways that are responding to the market, but that are not checking the boxes of the traditional LPs. And beyond that, the problems that you underline for female entrepreneurs, this is also the issues that we have as female fund managers. We tend to pitch more about impact and about the financial returns. Yeah. I don't know how we have to work on that. So sometimes when you pitch to an LP, you know that they are not responding because they, like the same bias that you see at the fund level when you're investing to entrepreneurs, you see the same bias also at the capital allocation level.
And I think you make a very good point, and I'm actually wanting to come to you first. Bongani will skip you, no discrimination here, but you make a very good point. As females, we often discount ourselves because we have an impact view as well as a financial view. And speaking to the females in the room, specifically entrepreneurs, when you show up, how do you show up? Do you show up with the mindset of you can speak to both or not? I think you make a very good point, Evelyn. How do you feel about that?
About women
Exactly.
pitching
How are
socially.
we showing up? Exactly.
Yes, I think it does happen a lot. And then more women are, we've already talked about this, more women come out there and say, hey, I can give how many people jobs, I can help people grow, I can help impact the lives of kids. And whilst that's important, and running back to the point about LPs caring or not, I think they're kind of indifferent. They just want their returns. So they want you to be making as much money as possible. If you want to make some impact, that's kind of your personal mission. But at the end of the day, LPs want to see their returns. So we have to be able to position and say, hey, caring about people is a huge market. Reaching the grassroots or providing a solution for people that do not have access is a huge market. I'm from Nigeria. Nigeria is 200 million people. If you are able to create a solution that can cater to $1 from one family in the poorest of regions, you are making bank. So in as much as you are creating impact, you are making a lot of money. And that is, when we pitch, we need to put that at the forefront of it and then follow on with the impact. Yeah. For whoever is important to on your website, you can go, hey, I'm an impact-driven founder. But then when you are making your pitches and when you are putting yourself out there, you have to say, hey, money is
Speak
coming.
to your audience, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's also tricky because if you come off strong, you are judged as aggressive. While a man
Yeah, but I
will
want
be
to
judged
challenge
as-
you on that. Why do women feel that if they come over strongly that they're... It's so interesting when a woman comes across, they actually say, we're emotional if we come across strongly. And if men come across strongly, they come across as confident, right? So those are some of the biases that we work with. And I think it's incumbent on ourselves to get over our own mindset. I don't think it's up to the men to change that for us. Yeah? Thank you for that, Evelyn. We're going to talk more about this. Bongani, so just to wrap on this question then on do LPs really care, if you can just put the lens on specifically around the statistics where female founders are funded because they work much harder to get the funding, as the Harvard Business Review says, they bring 2 times more return. They've done 250 sample of businesses. And LPs want money back. So how about convincing these LPs with impact and 2 times more return? It's almost a no-brainer. What are your thoughts on that in terms of speaking with LPs?
It's an interesting one because I think, firstly, the LPs themselves has to have a good balance of women and men in their own organization, right? To make sure that they are becoming an advocate of women, just in general. And I think if they can get that right, they will start to pave a way forward of how they think about investments and how they think about like backing other funds or even backing other women entrepreneurs in the market. So I think there's a lot of education that needs to be that we need to speak about, with LPs. I want to go back to her point around, when you look at investments in general across Africa, Africa is dominated by black people, but we don't have enough black funds, let alone women. Why? Right?
Exactly.
I think fundamentally that is what we need to change. And we need to change it at an LP level. But secondly, at a ecosystem builders like ourselves and Startup Bootcamp, the question is, one, are we balanced in our staff complement? Secondly, how much are we advocating for startups and women-led organizations in the market? And thirdly, how are we being intentional about LPs investing into these organizations? At Founders Factory, we are being intentional. One is we are completely balanced in terms of our staff complement, 50% women, 50% men. Is our staff of about 40 people. Secondly, we are being intentional about how we train and build new concepts that are women-led, and looking for early seed stage startups on the market that are women-led, so that we can be able to invest into those. I think what we still need to get right is the type of investors who need to come into these investments, and to remove the biases of whether men or women can do better in investments. And I think your stats, if there is anything to go by, we need to hone in a lot much more into that to be able to convince investors that they need to put in more into investments-led companies.
Fantastic. And in closing, we're not going to get to the third question. We're out of time. In closing, we had a VC Unconference this weekend, and I really want to say thanks to the men who were in that room. I did not once, as a woman, feel insulted or not. In fact, we were all trying to solve for this challenge. So 5 minutes for questions, or 2 minutes? 2 minutes for questions. Any questions on this very controversial topic? Yes.
So I would like to have your opinion on having specific quotas and maybe organizing a specific challenge that's just open to women to make sure that we are hitting the numbers.
So one of the things that came out of the unconference was targets. Specific challenges are short-lived. I mean, we're talking about systemic changes. These are 10, 15, 20-year tide changes in order to achieve what were those types of aspirational goals. Even like a 30% participation of females in fund management, or a 50% participation of female founders at the startup funding level. That's a long journey that we still have to walk, and you do have to balance it out against just saying, hey, we're going to fund female-led businesses over male-led businesses to hit a quota, when there's still a responsibility for the fund to return capital and to make sure that the fund is sustainable, et cetera. So you have to both make those intentional investments and provide the extra resources, the extra support programs like the ones at our level, which are building the kind of the groundswell. We're filling the funnel, but it's a long journey. So specific challenges, I think, would be too short-lived. But certainly having agreed upon industry targets and the consortiums where there's significant male participation, agreeing upon those ambitious targets, and then we're all working together to achieve those.
I'm actually for quotas at the fund level, because if you do not have the target to do X number of female-led deals in the year, you will skip them, because as a fund manager, you want to deploy capital as quickly as possible. And I'm talking from my own experience. I have been investing here for almost a decade, and before Week Capital, I was working in a normal fund. I never invested in one woman, because when they pitch, their pitch are less strong, and so you think that you're going quicker with the other entrepreneurs. So if you don't have that target, you are not going to take the time to prepare the deal, to make it, and then to follow on. I think it's very important that we have these quotas.
Thank you. Hi, thank you for the great talk. As a female founder, I find it, just some of my comments, I think what I find sometimes difficult is that we also don't have enough representation females in the BC side, because for us, sometimes it could be a little bit, we have this kind of like imposter syndrome, we're overthinking things too much, and sometimes having female VCs also can help you, because a lot of females, they have amazing ideas, and I find sometimes when I'm talking to other female founders that, we kind of navigate around each other, because we're like, okay, we kind of understand each other, but I'm kind of afraid to go over and talk to that side, right? But these females have like great ideas, so I think it will be really helpful also to have more representation on the VC side. I'll just give you another example. I'm part of a group of female founders, and they come from all over the world. They struggle with very similar things. It's kind of like even when they go for fundraising, it's like most of them prefer just to kind of do it themselves because they're not getting heard about what their actual solution is. Because the first thing is like, oh, you're a female founder, I'm going to offer you less because you're female. I think that's very true. And so it's, I don't know, it's just some of my comments, like I think like if we have more representation and make some of the female founders maybe feel comfortable before we're, try to pitch to everybody else, I think that will help a lot because I see like so much shyness in the female founder side. Like they come, they have amazing ideas, and then they leave. So they don't really have the time to just communicate what they're doing. And I think I've seen it even, like my sister is also a founder, right? And scalability is like you're just like, okay, well, I'm just gonna stay at this level. It's not that we don't have the capability to scale. It's just that at that point you just kind of stop. But I know for a fact that if, for example, we have the ability to scale, we can do so many amazing things.
Yeah.
So I think there's a missing representation in the VC world, and then also,
So the good news is really, as an African VC ecosystem, this weekend we really thrashed this out. And there's commitment to increase numbers. And as Philip said, it's going to be a long-term plan, but that really is so. In closing, this Harvard Business Review, they also quote Kaufman, is that where you have balanced ICs between male and female, so not predominantly male or female, and where you have balanced GPs, the returns are also much higher in the long term on the fund than if not. So the good news is it's coming. The bad news is maybe not in my generation, but definitely in those who have children, but it's definitely coming. And the last thing, we're out of time. They're moaning at us. Philip, quickly.
This is one other thing that I'm just super passionate about, especially for the male-led funds, to have in place very strong governance to ensure that in that power dynamic between female founders pitching and male investors making those decisions, that there's never lines crossed in the personal arena. So we have seen a couple of high-profile scenarios where this has come apart, but there has to be incredibly strong intentional support as men to make sure that power dynamic is never taken advantage of.
Can we give the panel a round of applause? Thank you. Thanks so much.